In the world of Axial GT, crimes against the gaming community are considered especially heinous. This is one of those stories. Hey friends, welcome back to Axial GT. I'll get to the burning of The Last of Us Part 2 in a moment. It's not as sinister as it might seem. Well, hell, maybe it is. You be the judge. But first I want to issue an apology. I meant to have this video up by now, and my apologies it wasn't. You see, I felt to be qualified to talk about The Last of Us Part 2, I should probably play the game. Even though I've seen countless streams from various creators on the game, like Upper Echelon Gamers, PewDiePie, and others. But my principles wouldn't let me critique the game without playing it, which also led to a dilemma. My PS4 quit a few months ago, and I didn't feel like buying a new one since the launch of the next generation consoles is just around the corner. So I went to a buddy's house with a 6-pack of my favorite beverage and proceeded to have a binge playing session of The Last of Us Part 2. And since I was playing at a friend's house, I didn't get to record the gameplay. So in steps Upper Echelon, with allowing me to use some of his footage in this video. So my thanks goes out to Upper Echelon. Oh yeah, and my friend did give me his copy and told me to burn it. So I obliged. So what did I think of the game? Well, like a lot of people who did reviews on YouTube, it sucked. Now don't get me wrong. Graphically, and the animations, were actually really good. The gameplay did remind me a lot of the first game, which is 7 years old. But if I was actually really scoring the game, I really wouldn't hold that against it. But this really isn't a review video. This video is about bad storytelling, with a few tidbits added in to give context. But the story blows, and when it blows hard. Games like The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2 are story-driven games, kind of like an interactive movie with gameplay thrown in. So a failure in storytelling, or just plain bad writing, carry a lot of weight. As an example, games like Call of Duty or Battlefield wouldn't be scored so heavy on storytelling, because they are action-oriented type games, and they don't need a story to move things along. If games like that have a story, it's more of an afterthought. But The Last of Us and Part 2 are all based around a story. I love the first game. The interactions between Joel and Ellie really gave me a feel for their characters. But in my opinion, Naughty Dog really messed up The Last of Us Part 2. It is the worst story writing I have seen in a long time. But later in the video, I'll give my thoughts on how the story should have gone. I wrote a rough outline, and I'll get to that in a moment. But first I need to bring up a few things that do irritate me, and I'll give you some context on how I think about things. But if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of when I upload. It really helps the algorithm. With that out of the way, let's get started. First things first, we've all seen the Metacritic scores of The Last of Us Part 2, and it shows a huge disconnect in between the critics and users. And I hate to beat a dead horse, but it's true. The Last of Us Part 2 follows the same footsteps as The Last Jedi. The disrespect of original characters that people have come to love and enjoy is a huge mistake when it comes to the fandom. And yes, I know some of the negative reviews are potentially fake, but so are some of the positive scores. So it evens out. Except for the rumors of Metacritic having issues accepting any more negative reviews, and some negative reviews disappearing from the site, and we also have Sony and Naughty Dog reaching out to the critics who were critical of the game, which is not a good move. They should have known what they've done to the original characters would divide the fan base. It's all BS. All of this does suggest something myself and others have thought for years. Metacritic is not for the public and does not really entail if a movie or game is actually good or not. Metacritic is actually for other critics to pat themselves on the back and give each other the reach around. It's really not for gamers themselves. This game is not a 10 out of 10. Or even a 9 out of 10. But it's not a 0 either. Well, unless you ask the friend who I played the game with. If I was scoring the game, I'd give it a solid 6. As I said earlier, graphics and animations are good, gameplay seems a little dated, but the story is terrible. So my apologies to Mr. Druckmann. I know you think The Last of Us Part 2 is your magnum opus, but a Michelangelo you are not. Now I'll warn you guys, there are spoilers ahead, so if you don't want The Last of Us Part 2 spoiled for you, you might want to click off the video. It's okay, I'll wait. Okay, Still with me? Now, in some of the first trailers we saw of the game, Ellie is on the bed playing her guitar with dead bodies laying around. So that tells me something profound happened to push Ellie to want to exact her revenge. The appearance of Joel letting her know he is with her on her path of revenge. Even the marketing was a lie, admittedly by Neil. Now, why did he lie? Well, he says it was to protect the story, but I think differently. I think it was because they knew people wouldn't buy their game if they disrespected the story and its characters. So why'd the story go down the dark path to what it is today? I really don't know, besides Naughty Dog not caring for the original characters. Now, we do know that Evan Hill did confirm that Anita Sarkeesian visited the studio about 4 years ago. But even with Naughty Dog's admitted progressive views, I really don't think Miss Anita actually worked physically on the game. And admittedly, I'm not a fan of hers. The only way she thinks you can have a strong female lead is to make males look dumb. And I won't go into how full of shit she is when it comes to her video series on gaming, as many YouTubers have debunked her assumptions in the past. But I will say, even my moderate feminist friends consider her a radical and has a problem with speaking before she thinks. And even though I don't think she worked on the game, her damage was done years earlier, causing Neil Druckmann to worship the ground she walks on. Nothing personal, just the way I see it. Now I'll go into a quick overview on how the story of The Last of Us Part 2 should have gone, and my apologies in advance. This is an overview, so it will be told in bullet points, like an outline, so bear with me. Now, I am keeping in line with Naughty Dog's prior point. They want a revenge story, they want some shock value to rattle the player's emotions, so keep in mind this is how I designed my outline of how The Last of Us Part 2 should have played out. First, the game starts out, Ellie and Joel are still getting used to the relative safety of Seattle. Ellie is still coming to grips with the lie that Joel told her in the first game, and she has also entered into a relationship with a pregnant Dina. Next, enter Abby, the leader of the Fireflies, or any other anarchist group that just wants to see the world burn. Either way, it doesn't matter. Abby is out for revenge for the death of her father years ago. She is slightly unhinged and has lost a lot of her humanity. Abby finds out Joel, her father's murderer, is in Seattle and sets off to exact her revenge. While Ellie and Joel are out on a supply run, Abby attacks the homestead of Ellie. Dina is the only one home. Dina fights valiantly, but is overcome by the group. Abby shoots Dina, killing her and her unborn child. Abby may not know that Dina is pregnant and could be used as a plot twist later. Abby, afraid the group might be overtaken by the citizens of Seattle, leaves the area but vows to find Joel to have her revenge. Joel and Ellie return to the aftermath. Ellie is devastated. This makes the first trailer we see actually come true, and Ellie and Joel set out on their journey to find this murderous group. Somewhere around the halfway point of the game, they track down Abby and her minions, but they are captured before Ellie can have her revenge. They are brought to a bunker where the group is holed up, and Abby is overjoyed. She finally has Joel. Ellie and Joel are beaten and tortured, being left in a weakened state. Abby leaves the room, telling them they are to die in the morning. During their solitude, Ellie and Joel hatch a plan for escape. Now at this point, the story can split. Either they both escape, or if Naughty Dog is bound and determined to kill Joel, this is where it should happen, but in a respectful way. During escape, Joel realizes only one of them is going to make it out. Joel sacrifices himself to give Ellie time to escape. The last thing Ellie hears is the screams of Joel. Remember this point. We will get back to it. Time passes. Ellie recuperates from her ordeal, realizing she has lost everything she loves, and goes after Abby again. She succeeds in finding her. She thinks about letting her live, but to honor Dina and Joel, Ellie kills Abby. Or make this game about player choice. Have two endings. One where Ellie kills Abby, and one she doesn't, and let the player deal with the ramifications of what they chose. Ellie makes her way back home. Depressed, she tries to carry on with her life, but it's difficult without her love and her father figure. End of story. So there you go, Mr. Druckmann. There's your magnum opus. There is a game that might deserve a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. In my version, Naughty Dog keeps their story of revenge intact. Miss Anita Sarkeesian is satisfied since there are strong female leads in both the antagonist and protagonist positions. And even if Joel dies, his character story is done in a respectful way, not dividing your fan base. Now you remember the point I asked you to remember? Ellie doesn't actually see Joel die, just his screams before fading to black. That would set up a third installment of The Last of Us. Did Joel die? Whether he actually did or not, it wouldn't matter. The seed has been planted on what if. Countless articles and videos on YouTube would be made with evidence for or against his death. And yes, I believe there will be a third installment of The Last of Us, even if it's for none other than it's a huge cash cow for Sony and Naughty Dog. So what do you guys think? Did you guys enjoy the original story of The Last of Us Part 2? Or would you have enjoyed a story more like the one I've outlined in this video? Or what changes would you make? It took me about 5 minutes to come up with this outline. It's sad that Naughty Dog had 7 years and their story is was all they could come up with. But if you like the video and enjoy content like this, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future uploads. I really appreciate you watching. Until next time, I'm out of here. You all have a good one.